Real for a second. Postdoctoral praxis of sacramental ontological engineering. I mean, wow, that is an incredibly intimidating title, right? It sounds like something buried in the dusty, untouched archives of a university basement, wrapped in just layers and layers of impenetrable academic syntax. But look, do not let the jargon push you away. Because what we're unpacking in this explainer is actually a fascinating, intensely grounded reality. We're looking at the work of Dr. Benoit Lapierre and his family, and what they've done is take these massive, dense theories and literally built them into something you can touch.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've structured this complex theory into 5 clear, digestible steps. First, a living, breathing mansion. Second, rethinking post-colonial development. Third, the language of building. Fourth, the delta T-square framework explained. And finally, number 5, repair as sacred worship. Section 1. A living, breathing mansion, the physical anchor. To really wrap our heads around this theory, we have to step completely away from the lecture hall. We're stepping right into the dust, the shade, and that unmistakable smell of rain hitting the laterite dirt in the Kanema district of Sierra Leone. This is the Kanema Mansion. Dr. Lapierre and his family are building this house by hand. It's totally off-grid, crafted from local laterite, clay, and recycled materials. But here's the critical shift in perspective you need to make. This is not just a family building a shelter. This physical house is actually a living, breathing, postdoctoral theory in physical form. They aren't just writing a thesis about post-colonial development. They're building it, brick by literal brick. The theory is the house.
Think about this for a second. The source text notes that, quote, the mansion's walls know the sweat of their making. Dr. Lapierre isn't some objective observer standing outside his research with a clipboard. By physically mixing the laterite and cement, the builder and the building become totally fused. The author describes this as a living flat metabolism. Meaning isn't just up in the person's head, and it's not just in the brick either. It exists in the active, sweaty movement happening between the two.
Section 2. Rethinking post-colonial development, a new blueprint. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast at the heart of Dr. Lapierre's work. Now that we've got our boots on the ground with the physical mansion, let's zoom out a bit. How does a hand-built house challenge our entire global blueprint for development? Well, on one hand, you have traditional, data-driven NGO development. That world often relies on managerial hierarchies, top-down control, and what the author calls a surveillance fetish. But contrast that with the Kanema approach. It totally rejects that exhausted binary of the global north swooping in to save the global south. Instead, it relies on low-tech humanism, decentralized authority, and networks of care, or courtyard friends. It is an approach rooted entirely in Afro-optimism.
And this low-tech humanism isn't just some abstract philosophy, it's highly practical. The mansion is a decentralized unit, decoupled from state grids. They use solar panels to capture what they wonderfully call the Lumiverse, the light of the Sierra Leonean sun. They harvest rainwater. And crucially, this independence is financed by a sweat covenant rather than fragile external debt instruments. Being off-grid here isn't about escaping society, It's a localized act of world creation that frees the family from those fragile top-down dependencies.
Section 3. The language of building. Verb forging.
So we have the physical bricks, and we have the developmental philosophy. But now we're shifting to what is arguably the most captivating part of this whole explainer. Let me pose this question to you. How does the language we invent shape the reality we build? Dr. Lapierre introduces this wild idea of a verbokinetic insurgency. He argues that the words we use aren't just labels we slap onto things. No, they are literal biological organs that we grow to help us navigate and construct our world.
The text calls this process verb forging. As the family works with tools and dirt, engaging in physical, manual labor, they literally forge new words, neologisms, to describe their exact sensory reality. They absolutely refuse to use managerial jargon from a boardroom. Instead, they invent words that match the rhythm of their own hands. Let's look at a few examples of this.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is how it takes dense academic theory and anchors it in pure sensation. Take haptoenosis. It simply means knowledge acquired through touch. It's that specific, undeniable knowing a carpenter has when running their hand along the grain of a wooden plank. You can't learn that from a data spreadsheet, right? You only learn it through the friction of the palm.
Then we have soil think. This is the idea that cognition, or thinking, isn't just something that happens trapped inside your skull. It's literally a property of the living soil. It represents decisions that are made while you are physically kneeling in the garden with your hands deep in the earth. Authority here circulates in the laterite dirt, not from some detached, top-down command center.
And this one is perhaps my favorite, play lo soda. This concept frames the heavy labor of building and development not as some grinding chore, but as joyful, serious, sacred play. The author describes this as an effervescence, literally like the fizz in soda, that prevents the heavy, crushing trauma of history from collapsing their daily progress. It brings joy to the architecture.
Section 4. The Delta T-square framework explained. The deep architecture. Now that we understand the bricks and the newly forged words, we are finally equipped to tackle the theoretical scaffolding that holds it all together. It's called the double transversal transjective quadratic model, or delta T squared for short. I know, we are back to the tenure-dense academic syntax, but stick with me here. If you strip away all those heavy syllables, this model simply describes how a house, a family, and an environment can operate perfectly together without anyone needing to be the boss.
So the crucial point is how these four dimensions balance each other out to keep the whole system singing. First, you have the transversal. That's the decentralized family unit, integrating horizontally without a hierarchy. Next up is the transjective, which is the relationship built through shared handiwork, like repairing a tool together. Then you've got the quadratic, which provides systemic stability through off-grid solar and water autonomy. And finally, the flat real, which is the physical manifest reality of the mansion itself. No single quadrant dominates, they are constantly feeding into each other to maintain perfect harmony.
Let's just take a quick breather from the heavy theory to appreciate what this actually looks like on the ground. The author writes, quote, "The Kennemagorian future is not a glass tower fantasy. It is a courtyard future, a water future, a solar future, a tool future, a kin future, a hand future, a prayer future. It accelerates progress not by uprooting people into shiny skyscrapers, but by deepening their connection to the exact ground they stand on."
Section 5. Repair as sacred worship. Eschatological maintenance.
This brings us to the final and honestly most provocative takeaway of the thesis. It fundamentally rethinks our relationship to the things we own, the places we live, and the whole concept of dominion. The text introduces the concept of eschatological maintenance. Now, this is the radical idea that building a utopia isn't about arriving at some flawless, shiny future where work just ceases to exist. Instead, utopia is found in the disciplined, daily joy of maintaining exactly what you have right now. It's tending toward an ultimate purpose by being radically present in the moment.
Let's move to and see how this builds into real life. Step away from the high theology for a second. Grand academic theories become as simple as these three chores. Dominion as maintenance,